Hey kids, this is Mr. Cozy and this is video 1. This first unit that we are looking at is really a hodgepodge of ideas that you learned in previous classes. So these first few videos are a lot of review of different concepts that may or may not be clearly related to each other. For video 1, we're going to talk about two things: fractions and converting fractions, and then the order of operations. So let's get to it. Fractions consist of a numerator, which is an integer or something that turns into an integer, and then a denominator, which is also an integer or something that turns into an integer. And this fraction represents some quantity, in this case 3 out of 4. All fractions of this kind belong to a class of number called rational numbers. Rational numbers, in short, are any number that you can write as a fraction, like this. Okay, so it consists of fractions, whole numbers, integers, terminating decimals, and repeating decimals. Now let's go through these. Integers, any integer, any whole number that you write, you can always turn into a fraction if you put it over 1. Never ever forget this, because a lot of times this year it will become useful to us if we take something that isn't a fraction, like a 3 or an x or pi, I don't know, and write it as a fraction when we put it over 1. Okay? I can always write anything that isn't a fraction, I can write as a fraction this way, especially integers. Okay? Now, terminating decimals and repeating decimals are what you get when you take a fraction and convert it to a decimal form. Any fraction that's two integers, one in the numerator, one in the denominator, you can convert it to a decimal, and you will get either a terminating or repeating decimal. You do that through, to convert to decimal, divide the numerator, by the denominator. Okay, so something like negative 3 over 4, I can convert to a fraction if I divide the numerator with the denominator. Okay, in my calculator, I can do that very quickly. Negative 3 divided by 4, and I get negative 0.75. Okay, this is a terminating decimal because it stops. It's negative 0.75 and nothing else. If I take something like 2/7, okay, 2 divided by 7, I get this repeating decimal. Now, because it's 7, it repeats pretty hard. It goes 0.285 285,714, 285,714. That's what repeats. Okay, that's a pretty harsh repeating decimal. Another example is 1/3, which you may know. 1 divided by 3 is 0.33333. So 0.33, make a bar to show that it repeats. Okay, that's converting fractions to decimals. Let's talk about the order of operations. Order of operations is parenthesis, then exponents, then you multiply and you divide left to right at the same time and group those together because those happen at the same time. And then you add and subtract at the same time and group those together because they happen at the same time, left to right. So parentheses, exponents, multiply, divide, add, subtract. You may remember this with the helpful mnemonic PEMDAS. PEMDAS. So let's look at an example. Let's look at 2 times 3 plus 7 divided by 2. Okay? No parenthesis, no exponents. I multiply and divide left to right. So 2 times 3 is 6. 7 divided with 2 is 3.5. Okay, I multiply and divide left to right, and then I add and subtract left to right. So 6 plus 3.5 is 9.5. Okay, let's look at another example. Let's look at 150 divided by parenthesis 6 plus 3 times 2 to the third minus 5. Okay? So, parenthesis. I have a set of parenthesis right here, so I do what's in here first. Now, when you have a set of parenthesis, what's inside, you repeat the order of operations on. So from here to here, in this little section, I'm repeating the order of operations again. Do I have parenthesis in here? No. Exponents, yes. 2 to the third. 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. So that's an 8. Okay. Now I multiply and divide. That's 3 times 8 is 24. And then I add and subtract. 6 plus 24 is 30. Okay. Having completed this set of parentheses, I go back to my larger expression and write in whatever result I got. And then I continue my order of operations. I have handled parenthesis. Next up, exponents. None here. Multiply and divide. 150 divided with 30. 150 divided with 30 is 5. So that's 5. And then I add and subtract. 5 minus the 5 is 0. Okay? Now the thing to remember about parentheses is sometimes we write them out, as you've seen here. But other times the parenthesis is implied because of how the expression is written. Okay? In this example, when it's written this way, I have to put the parenthesis here. However, I can use a fraction bar and write this same expression this way. And because of how it's written, because of how it's written, it's implied that this has to happen first. Okay, these are called implied parentheses. Another example is something like 36 minus 6 over 12 plus 3. To work this fraction out, I need to subtract in my numerator and add in my denominator first. And then I can work out the fraction. Okay? We'll talk about some more odds and ends tomorrow. This is all that I want to wrap up for today. Have a great evening. Talk to you tomorrow.